You know what's absolutely insane? There's a country that has to rebuild the same bridge 3 times in a single decade. Not because of poor construction, not because of corruption, but because the Earth itself keeps destroying it. And when I tell you where this is happening, you're going to understand why this might be the most impossible infrastructure challenge any nation has ever faced. But here's the thing that really gets me. This isn't some distant problem. This is happening right now, to over 110 million people, and the solution they're attempting is so ambitious, so ridiculously expensive, that it makes building the Panama Canal look like a weekend DIY project. I'm talking about the Philippines. And before you click away thinking this is just another geography video, stay with me, because what's happening there is going to blow your mind. We're talking about a country that's literally being torn apart by the planet, and their response is to do something that engineers said was impossible. So let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're trying to connect over 7,600 islands. Not a handful, 7,600 islands. Now imagine that 20 of these islands contain volcanoes that could erupt at any moment. Imagine that the ground beneath your feet shifts multiple times every single day. Imagine that every single year, 20 massive storms barrel through, each one capable of washing away entire towns. And now imagine you're trying to build roads, bridges, railways, and entire cities on top of all of that. That's the Philippines. And what they're doing about it is genuinely one of the most fascinating stories I've ever come across. Because here's what nobody tells you about the Philippines. It sits on what geologists call the Ring of Fire. And if you don't know what that is, picture a massive horseshoe of pure geological chaos stretching around the Pacific Ocean. It's where tectonic plates smash into each other like bumper cars driven by angry gods. And the Philippines? It's right in the middle of the demolition derby. The country sits where 3 major tectonic plates meet. The Philippine Sea Plate, the Eurasian Plate, and the Indo-Australian Plate are all grinding against each other beneath Filipino feet. Every single day. We're talking about chunks of the Earth's crust the size of continents, moving, colliding, subducting under each other. The Philippines experiences an average of 5 earthquakes per day. 5 per day. Most are small, sure, but imagine being an engineer trying to design a building knowing the ground is literally going to shake today. You just don't know when or how hard. But it gets worse. Because of all this tectonic activity, the Philippines has over 300 volcanoes, and 24 of them are active. 24 mountains that could just decide to explode at any moment. Mount Pinatubo did exactly that in 1991, and it was the second largest volcanic eruption of the entire 20th century. It ejected so much ash into the atmosphere that it lowered global temperatures by half a degree Celsius. For an entire year, the whole planet got cooler because one Filipino mountain got angry. And then there are the typhoons. Oh man, the typhoons. The Philippines gets hit by an average of 20 typhoons every single year. 20. These aren't little rainstorms. These are massive, rotating engines of destruction with winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Typhoon Haiyan in 2013 had wind speeds of 315 kilometers per hour. That's almost as fast as a Formula One race car at top speed. Except it's wind, carrying water and debris, and it lasted for days. So you've got islands being shaken apart by earthquakes, threatened by volcanoes, and battered by superstorms. And here's the kicker. Filipinos still need to get to work. They still need to go to school. They still need hospitals, electricity, internet, food. All the things that require infrastructure. Infrastructure that keeps getting destroyed. Now, before I go any further, I need to tell you something. My mom told me I'd never hit 5,000 subscribers on this channel. She said, nobody wants to hear you ramble about countries and infrastructure. And honestly, that hurt. But you know what would hurt more? Proving her right. So if you're enjoying this story, if you're as fascinated as I am about what the Philippines is attempting to do, just hit that subscribe button. Let's prove her wrong together. Because we're just getting to the really crazy part, and I promise you, you're going to want to see where this goes. Alright, so back to the Philippines. You might be wondering, how do you even begin to solve a problem like this? How do you build permanent infrastructure on land that refuses to stay still? The answer is, you spend an absolutely obscene amount of money, and you get creative in ways that would make science fiction writers jealous. The Philippine government has embarked on what they call build, build, build. It's an infrastructure program that sounds simple, but is anything but. We're talking about a 9 trillion peso investment. That's roughly 160 billion US dollars. To put that in perspective, that's more than the GDP of most countries. They're spending this money to build 75 major projects, highways, bridges, railways, airports, seaports, all designed to connect the disconnected, to turn 7,600 islands into something resembling a unified nation. But here's where it gets really interesting. They can't just build normal bridges. They can't just pour concrete and hope for the best. Every single structure has to be engineered to withstand forces that would make engineers in other countries quit their jobs. Earthquake-resistant foundations that can flex and sway without crumbling. Bridge designs that can handle not just the weight of traffic, but the lateral forces of shifting tectonic plates. Buildings that can survive both horizontal shaking and vertical volcanic eruptions and horizontal typhoon winds all at once. Take the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway. It's an 8.9-kilometer bridge that connects Cebu City to Mactan Island. Sounds straightforward, right? Except this bridge had to be built over water in an active seismic zone, in an area that gets hammered by typhoons, and it had to be designed to last at least 100 years. The foundation alone required hundreds of massive concrete piles driven deep into the seabed, each one designed to absorb earthquake energy. The bridge deck had to be engineered to handle wind speeds of over 250 kilometers per hour. And because it's in salt water, every component had to be treated to resist corrosion that would normally eat through steel and concrete in decades. The cost? 30 billion pesos. For one bridge. And they need hundreds of these. Or consider the Mindanao Railway Project. This is a proposed 2,000-kilometer railway network that would run the entire length of Mindanao, the second largest island in the Philippines. Now, building a railway is already complicated, but building one on an island where the ground moves, where floods can wash away embankments, where volcanic lahars can bury tracks under meters of mud, that's a nightmare. They have to survey every single kilometer for fault lines. They have to build elevated tracks in flood zones. They have to design tunnels through mountains that could literally fill with lava. And they have to do all of this while maintaining service, because people need to travel. The estimated cost for this one project? Over $7 billion. And that's probably a conservative estimate, because every time they start digging, they find new problems. New fault lines, new flood risks, new volcanic activity. But the absolute craziest project, the one that really shows you how serious the Philippines is about solving this problem, is the Luzon Strait Bridge. This is a proposed bridge that would connect the Philippines to Taiwan. Let me say that again. They want to build a bridge across the ocean to another country. The distance? About 250 kilometers. That's longer than the distance from London to Paris. Across open ocean. In one of the most seismically active and storm-prone regions on the entire planet. Is this even possible? Engineers are genuinely divided. Some say yes. With enough money and the right technology, you could build a series of bridges and tunnels hopping between the islands in the Luzon Strait. Others say it's madness, that the forces involved, the maintenance costs, the sheer audacity of building 250 kilometers of bridges and tunnels through a geological war zone makes it effectively impossible. But the Philippines is seriously considering it, because that's how desperate the need for infrastructure is. And here's the thing that really gets me. All of this, every peso spent, every bridge built, every railway laid, it's all a temporary solution. Because the Philippines isn't just fighting geography, it's fighting time. The same forces that make infrastructure so expensive, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the typhoons, they're not going away. They're permanent features of being in the ring of fire. Which means that every single piece of infrastructure built today will eventually need to be rebuilt. Maybe in 20 years, maybe in 50, but eventually, the earth will destroy it, and they'll have to build it again. So why do it? Why spend hundreds of billions of dollars on infrastructure that you know won't last forever? And this is where the story becomes really human. Because infrastructure isn't just about moving people and goods. It's about dignity. It's about opportunity. It's about a kid in a remote island being able to go to university in Manila. It's about a fisherman being able to get his catch to market before it spoils. It's about a pregnant woman being able to reach a hospital in time. It's about 110 million people being able to participate in the modern economy, to connect with each other, to build lives that aren't constantly interrupted by the fact that they happen to live on islands that won't stay still. There's this bridge in the Visayas region, I forget the exact name, but it was built in the early 2000s. Beautiful piece of engineering. Cost millions. Withstood several earthquakes, multiple typhoons. Everyone was proud of it. Then in 2013, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit. The bridge didn't collapse, which is amazing, but it cracked. Structural integrity compromised. So they had to close it. Spent years repairing it. Reopened in 2016. Then another earthquake in 2017. More cracks. More repairs. It's like playing the world's most expensive game of whack-a-mole, except instead of moles, it's geological disasters. And instead of a mallet, you're using millions of dollars. But they keep fixing it. Because the alternative is to give up. To accept that some islands will just remain isolated. That some communities will just have to make do without reliable connections to the rest of the country. And Filipinos refuse to accept that. There's this concept in engineering called resilience. It's different from strength. Strength is about resisting forces. Resilience is about absorbing them, adapting to them, recovering from them. And that's what Filipino infrastructure is becoming. Not stronger necessarily, but more resilient. Buildings that can sway in earthquakes without breaking. Bridges with joints that allow for movement. Roads built in segments that can be replaced individually. It's infrastructure that acknowledges it will be damaged and plans for it. And you know what's wild? Other countries are watching. Because climate change means more extreme weather everywhere. Rising sea levels mean more coastal flooding. And while most countries don't have to deal with 20 typhoons a year or daily earthquakes, they're starting to face more extreme conditions than they're used to. So the solutions the Philippines develops, the techniques they pioneer, the technologies they adopt, these could become blueprints for the rest of the world. The Philippines is essentially beta testing infrastructure for a more chaotic planet. They're learning lessons that everyone else will eventually need to know. I came across this interview with a Filipino civil engineer who's worked on several of these major projects. He said something that stuck with me. He said, "People ask me if it's frustrating, building things you know will be damaged. And yes, it is. But it's also beautiful. Because every time we rebuild, we build it better. We learn. We adapt. We're not trying to conquer geography. We're learning to dance with it." And I think that's it. That's the story here. It's not about defeating the earth. It's about figuring out how to coexist with it, even when it's actively trying to shake you off. The Philippines isn't just building infrastructure. They're redefining what infrastructure means in the 21st century. They're showing that you can build in impossible conditions if you're willing to think differently, spend wisely, and never, ever give up. And yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, sometimes a bridge you just finished building gets destroyed before you even finish celebrating. But the alternative is accepting isolation, accepting that geography determines destiny. And Filipinos aren't accepting that. So the next time you complain about a pothole in your neighborhood, or a delayed train, or construction that's taking too long, remember that there's a country out there rebuilding the same infrastructure over and over again, not because they want to, but because giving up isn't an option. Remember that there are engineers designing bridges that need to survive earthquakes, volcanoes, and super typhoons simultaneously. Remember that there are 110 million people living on islands that are actively trying to shake them off, and they're still building, still connecting, still refusing to let geography win. The Philippines versus geography. It's the most expensive infrastructure challenge on Earth. And you know what? The Philippines is winning. Not because they've solved the problem. They haven't. They probably never will. But because they keep fighting. They keep building. They keep adapting. And in a world that's getting more chaotic, more extreme, more unpredictable, that kind of resilience isn't just impressive. It's essential. It's the blueprint we're all going to need. And that's the story. That's why this matters. Not just because it's fascinating, though it absolutely is, but because it's a preview of the future. A future where we don't get to choose our geography, but we do get to choose how we respond to it. The Philippines chose to build, to connect, to never give up. And honestly, that's pretty incredible.